Welcome Team Rhino. During the month of June, IRF is focused on reforestation. You can help us plant trees in Indonesia's Way Kambas National Park in Sumatra. For every $1 donated, you will plant a tree. And with every $1,000 raised, IRF and its partners will plant an acre of new rainforest. Joining me today is IRF's Deputy Director, CeCe Sieffert. CeCe visited Indonesia before COVID-19 restrictions were put in place and stopped by the reforestation areas. Welcome, CeCe, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Chris. It's so great to be here.
I wonder if you'd start us off by telling us a little bit more about your trip.
Sure. I have the best job in the world. I get to go out and visit our rhino field partners out in the field. And several times a year, I get to go to Indonesia. And one of the sites I visit there is Way Kambas National Park. And Way Kambas is critically important for two reasons. One, it is one of the few remaining wild populations of Sumatran rhinos. It also holds Sumatran tigers and Sumatran elephants and other critically endangered species in the forest. And in addition to that, it's also home to the Sumatran Rhino Sanctuary that we call the SRS, which is where we have 7 Sumatran rhinos in a conservation breeding program. So when I go to the field programs, I meet with partners to see how projects are moving along, what issues might be coming up, and see how we can help things move forward to ensure conservation of these species.
Great. What are the sites like, and how did they become degraded?
Well, Way Kambas National Park is the only national park in Indonesia that doesn't have a buffer zone. It goes right up on the line of the national park is a pineapple plantation in some areas. Other parts of the park border villages directly. And so there was an area where about 5,000 families had been living within the park. And they had been cutting down trees and built houses there and were growing food for their own consumption and for sale in this area. And about 10 years ago, the families were removed into local communities. So they moved back to local villages. But that area has remained degraded ever since. It's essentially a big dry grassland. And when you compare that to just a few kilometers away in the heart of the Sumatran rhino habitat in Way Kambas, which is lush jungle, filled with biodiversity, and then to come to sort of this green desert almost that's just a open grassland. It's quite a contrast.
And you got to plant a tree in the area. So what was it like to get things started and you know, plant a tree to recover the rainforest?
Well, it was just an opportunity to do a tiny part. The guys on the ground who are doing the work day in, day out are really doing the layman's work. They're clearing the area in preparation for the trees being planted and planting the trees themselves. But one really fun part about the tree plantings is that the keepers at the SRS take the rhino poop and use that as the next plantings. So the rhino poop is collected and the seeds of the rhino's favorite food are in that poop, and they're surrounded by fertilizer, so they grow quite well. And those new seedlings are part of this restoration project. So I think I got to plant a rhino poop tree.
Why is habitat management and the recovery of new habitat particularly important to rhinos and other wildlife?
Well, the reason why we're at risk of even losing the Sumatran rhino is because of habitat destruction and fragmentation. There's when you compare how much rainforest and habitat there used to be for these species to what there's left now, it's just tiny little fragments. And these species are barely holding on in these little protected areas. The fact that these protected areas themselves are also being degraded further, either through illegal logging or through illegal agriculture within the national park, it's just they have such a tiny space, we have to do everything we can to conserve what's left. So the parts of the park that have been degraded must be restored if we hope to have the population of Sumatran rhinos and the other endangered species in the area increase at all, because they're getting close to carrying capacity and we just need more space.
Rhinos are considered an umbrella species. What does that mean?
Well, When a park is healthy enough to have a rhino living in it, it means that it's healthy enough to sustain many other species that, you know, aren't as flashy and perhaps might not be on the cover of a magazine, but are also critically important. And we consider rhinos an umbrella species. We also call them a flagship species because they are a symbol of a healthy habitat that can support thousands of different plants and animals. And when a habitat is robust and healthy enough to support a population of rhinos, it can support many other things. So that's why we use rhinos as sort of a thermometer to read the temperature and health of a park.
The national park put in a specific ranger unit to patrol the area of the first site. Could you tell us a little bit about that ranger unit?
Yeah, the rangers are fantastic young men who work with the national park. They call themselves the Restoration Protection Units, the REPUs or the other RPUs, to work in collaboration with the Yabi RPUs, who are the Rhino Protection Units. And those men, they work on prepping the site, on developing the seedlings and growing the seedlings in the nursery and planting the trees. And once the trees have been planting, they ensure the site itself is safe. So in addition to just planting and tending to the restoration area, they're also doing patrolling in that area. They have kept poachers out of the area. They have stopped wildfires. They have even seen really incredible wildlife within the restoration itself, including a Sumatran tiger and several pangolins. So there is some wildlife creeping back, and even though it's considered still degraded land, it's critically important that it is patrolled, because as I said, there's no buffer zone on the edge of the park, and it's so easy for people to come in and out of that park. And so having those rangers on the border in the restoration area, we're ensuring that the park writ large is also secure.
And local communities are also involved in this project, particularly in the second site. Can you tell us about their involvement as well as how they will benefit?
Sure, it's a really fantastic program developed by the National Park where, in collaboration with the local local farmer group, they have families who want to participate. And what they do is they are given, each family is given 1,000 seedlings. And these are these tiny little tree seedlings. And they tend to those seedlings and ensure that they will grow into nursery stock that's big enough to go out into the wild. Then the national park purchases those seedlings from the families. So it's not only an income generator for the communities, but it's also an opportunity for them to be part of Way Kambas being a vital economic engine that can help drive the economy in the local community.
Great. What gives you hope for the survival of Sumatran rhinos?
I'm hopeful because the situation is not dire that there isn't a chance for them to survive. For both species, there is still hope and there is still an opportunity. For Javan rhinos, the population has been increasing. We've been able to expand the habitat and provide additional food plants by cutting down an aggressive palm that blocks out essentially rhino food plants. By clearing that palm out, we've been essentially expanded the Javan rhino habitat, and the population is growing because of it. And Sumatran rhinos, it's a bit more difficult because they're not all in one place. As I said, it's the fragmentation that has really caused the rapid decline of the Sumatran rhino. And right now they're dispersed across 10 small subpopulations. So our hope is to capture the isolated animals and the animals sort of left in national parks in populations that aren't large enough to sustain themselves naturally and grow naturally, and bring them into the conservation breeding program at the SRS in Way Kambas. And 2 years ago, we were given a very generous donation by an anonymous donor to double the size of the Sumatran Rhino Sanctuary in Way Kambas National Park. And now we have open space ready for some new rhinos to come in. And we are working with the government of Indonesia and the local, the national program called the Sumatran Rhino Rescue, to capture those rhinos and bring them into the breeding program so that we can increase the number of Sumatran rhinos.
Thank you. Thanks for all that information today. I'd like to ask you, are there any last thoughts before we conclude?
No, I hope people don't give up hope. You know, the number is quite small. We don't have the exact number of Sumatran rhinos, but we know it is less than 80 individuals. They are dispersed, and of course, many of the capture operations have all been put on hold because of COVID. But while we are all stuck at home and working from home, we're continuing to draw up plans and develop contingencies and prepare training. And as soon as we can travel over there, we're going to start building up capacity immediately so that we can safely capture those animals and bring them into the conservation breeding program. So we have a plan. We certainly have the will. And as soon as we can start traveling, we can start executing a really important program.
Well, thank you, CeCe, for joining me today. During the month of June, every $1 donated plants a tree, and IRF will say thank you with a certificate for you to show proudly. With every $1,000 donated, IRF and its partners will replant an entire acre and recognize you with a name on a sign on the location. So gather your friends and family into a giving circle to plant some new rainforest habitat, and IRF will plant your sign as a legacy. Also, your donation will be matched by a generous IRF board member. So donate today at rhinos.org/reforestation, and we'll plant twice as many trees with your help. Thank you, Team Rhino. We'll see you later.